Hello there, and welcome to my channel. I'm so glad you found your way here today. We are going to spend some time with a part of yourself you have carried every day of your life, and almost certainly never noticed. It works in the dark. It works while you sleep. It is working right now beneath these words, and you have never once had to think about it. And before we begin, if these calm explorations are something you enjoy, consider liking and subscribing. It helps others find their way here too. Now let's begin. Settle into wherever you are sitting. Without looking, you know where your hands rest. You know your feet are crossed or flat, your shoulders raised or low. No glance was needed. The knowledge was simply there, quiet and complete. This is a true sense, as real as sight, and it has a name: proprioception, the sense of your own body in space, stitched together from thousands of tiny detectors buried in your muscles and joints, each one reporting its angle, its stretch, its load, every fraction of a second. Most people live their whole lives without learning it exists, because it never fails loudly enough to be noticed. The five senses get the stories. This one does the work. And the strangest part is how seamless it feels. As though knowing your own body were the simplest thing in the world. It is not simple. It is one of the most relentless calculations your brain performs. Where did the idea of five senses even come from? Not from a laboratory. Not from anatomy. Picture a man in ancient Greece walking among olive trees, thinking carefully about how a person knows the world. Aristotle drew up a list: sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch, and it was elegant, and it was wrong, or at least far from complete. For more than 2,000 years, that tidy count was repeated in classrooms and carried into common speech, until it hardened into something everyone simply knew. The truth is that the body holds many more senses than five, and scientists today argue over whether the real number is 8 or 12 or more than 20, depending on where you draw the lines. Balance is not on Aristotle's list. Pain is not on it. The sense of your own body, the sense of temperature, the sense of your heartbeat, none of them made the count. A philosopher's neat idea outran the evidence and shaped how billions of people imagine their own perception. It is worth pausing on how long a beautiful, simple answer can stand in for a true one. The number 5 was never the body's count. It was ours. Try something just once, gently. Close your eyes and bring a fingertip slowly to the tip of your nose. You will land. You always land. And nothing told your finger where your nose was, because both were hidden in the dark behind closed eyes. There was no looking, no fumbling, no search. The finger simply arrived. What guided it is the same body sense we met a moment ago. Yet here is the quiet thing about it. In ordinary speech, there is no word for what you just did. We say sight, we say hearing, and everyone understands. But the sense that, let your hand find your face in darkness, lives outside the common vocabulary entirely. It is invisible even in language. Doctors test it by asking a patient, eyes shut, which way a toe is being bent, up or down. And a healthy body answers without hesitation. Lose it, and even standing becomes a problem to be solved consciously, moment by moment. We name the senses that entertain us, and forget the ones that hold us upright. Some of the most essential things you possess have never needed a word, because they have never asked for your attention. Think of the last time you walked through your home at night without turning on a light. You did not crawl. You did not feel along the walls with both hands. You walked more or less normally, your feet finding the floor, your body adjusting to the stairs it could not see. That ease is not courage, and it is not memory alone. It is your body reading itself from within. Every step sends a flood of signals upward. The ankles angle, the knees bend, the precise tension in each muscle as your weight shifts, and the brain assembles all of it into a living map of where you are, updated faster than thought. Vision, when you have it, simply checks that map against the world. Take vision away, and the map still holds. This is why a dancer can close her eyes mid-turn and still know exactly where her limbs have gone, and why you can climb a familiar staircase while half asleep. The sense runs underneath everything, asking nothing, missed only when it breaks. Most of what keeps you steady in this world you will never feel at all. Imagine waking one morning and finding that your body has gone silent. Not paralyzed, the muscles still work, but silent in a deeper way, no longer reporting where it is. This happened to a man named Ian Waterman, who at 19 lost his sense of body position from the neck down after an illness damaged the rare nerves that carry it. He could move. He simply could not feel where he was moving. At first he could not sit upright, could not hold a cup, could not walk because his body no longer told him what it was doing. What he did next is what makes the story remarkable. He learned to move by watching. Every gesture, every step, every reach for a glass became a deliberate act of vision, his eyes doing the work the lost sense once did in silence. If the lights went out, he collapsed where he stood. For decades he controlled his entire body by looking at it consciously without pause, the way you might guide a puppet on strings. It reveals how much that quiet inner sense was doing all along, how much steadiness you are handed for free. He had to earn back with constant attention what the rest of us never know we have. There is a place inside your skull where the body keeps its sense of down. Deep in each inner ear, behind the part that hears, sit small looping canals filled with fluid, and beside them, two little chambers holding something stranger still. Inside those chambers rest tiny crystals, grains of calcium carbonate sitting on a bed of fine hair like sensors. When you tilt your head, gravity pulls the crystals, the hairs bend, and a signal fires, telling your brain exactly how your head is oriented in space. This is the vestibular sense, your private instrument for balance and motion, and it runs entirely without sight. Close your eyes and tip your head slowly to one side. You know you have tilted. The crystals knew before you did. When those crystals come loose, which happens to many people as they age, the world begins to spin violently. With a simple turn of the head, a condition doctors can sometimes cure by guiding the stray crystals back into place with careful movements. A handful of grains smaller than dust decide whether you stand or fall. The whole towering sense of an upright world rests on something almost too small to see. You have felt this almost certainly. You step off a spinning ride, or rise too fast from a long turn in a chair, and the world keeps moving though your feet are planted still. Why does the spinning outlast the spin? The answer is, in that inner ear fluid we just met. When you rotate, the fluid in those looping canals swirls along with you, bending the sensory hairs, telling the brain you are turning. Stop suddenly and your body halts, but the fluid does not. Like water in a glass set down hard, it keeps circling for a few seconds on its own momentum, still bending those hairs, still insisting that you are spinning. Now your eyes report a steady world, while your ears swear you are turning, and the brain, caught between two honest witnesses, gives you dizziness as the cost of their disagreement. Dancers defeat this with a trick called spotting, snapping the head around faster than the body, so the fluid never builds its swirl. The vertigo is not weakness or illness. It is two senses briefly telling different truths, and your awareness paying the difference. Even the steadiness you trust is a negotiation. Consider what happens to that delicate crystal system when gravity disappears. In orbit, an astronaut floats, and the tiny crystals that have spent a lifetime being pulled downward suddenly have nothing pulling on them at all. The sense of down, built entirely on gravity's steady tug, goes quiet. For the first days in space, many astronauts feel deeply unwell, their stomachs lurching, their sense of orientation scrambled, because the brain is receiving signals that no longer match anything it has ever known. Up and down lose their meaning. An astronaut may feel upside down while looking at a colleague who feels perfectly upright, both of them correct, neither of them anchored. Slowly over days, the brain adapts, learning to lean on vision and on the feel of the body against surfaces, instead of on a sense that no longer speaks. Then they return to Earth, and the whole adjustment must reverse gravity, flooding back into a system that had learned to live without it. The sense of down feels permanent, woven into the floor of every experience you have ever had. It is not permanent. It is borrowed from a force we forget is even there, until it lets go. Sit quietly for a moment, and try to feel your heartbeat without touching yourself, without a finger on your wrist or your neck. Some of you will find it almost at once a steady pulse rising into awareness. Others will reach and find nothing there, only stillness. This difference is real and measurable, and it matters far more than it sounds. The ability to sense your own heart from the inside is called cardiac interoception, and people vary widely in how sharp it is. Here is the quiet finding that has occupied researchers. Those who sense their heartbeat more accurately tend to experience their emotions more intensely and read their own feelings more clearly. The body, it turns out, is not just a vessel the emotions ride in. The signals rising from the heart, the gut, the breath are part of how an emotion is built in the first place. Fear is partly a racing heart noticed. Calm is partly a slow pulse felt. To sense your inner body well is to feel your own life more vividly. The connection between you and yourself runs through channels you were never taught to listen for. There is a sense whose whole territory is the inside of you. Not the world out there, the light and sound and surfaces, but the quiet interior, the country beneath the skin. It is called interoception, and it is the body sensing itself, its hunger and fullness, its thirst, the pace of its breath, the warmth or cold moving through it, the subtle ache or ease of being alive in this moment. Most of it never reaches awareness, and that is by design, for if you felt every signal from every organ at once, you could not think at all. The brain filters almost all of it away, letting through only what you need, the sudden thirst, the rising hunger, the breath that asks to deepen. This sense is ancient, older than sight, older than hearing, present in creatures with no eyes at all. Because before a body needs to know the world, it needs to know itself. Everything you call a mood, a gut feeling, a sense of wellness or unease draws on this hidden stream. You spend your life attending to the world outside. Underneath, without pause, your body keeps reading the one inside. Think back to the last time you stood before something that mattered. A stage, a door you had to knock on, a name you were about to call, and there it was, that fluttering low in the stomach light, and restless the feeling we have all agreed to call butterflies. It feels like a figure of speech. It is not. What you feel in that moment is a genuine physical event inside your gut, carried upward into awareness by interoception, the body's sense of itself. When the mind registers something important, the nervous system shifts. Blood is redirected away from the digestive tract toward the muscles, the gut's own activity changes, and the dense web of nerves lining your intestines reports all of it upward to the brain. That report, felt rather than understood, is the flutter. It is your body preparing for action before your conscious mind has finished deciding anything. The same churn arrives before joy and before dread, because the body braces the same way for both, and only the situation tells you which name to give it. This is worth sitting with. The phrase that sounds like poetry is a precise description of nerves firing in your abdomen. Long before you have words for what you feel, your gut has already spoken. Some decisions arrive before you have reasoned them through. You meet someone, and something says yes or no before a single argument forms. Where does that come from? Part of the answer lives in the body, and it can be measured. In studies, traders and decision makers who could most accurately sense their own heartbeat tended to perform better under pressure and to read fast-moving situations more shrewdly. The body was feeding them information, and they were equipped to receive it. Here is how it seems to work. Long before a choice becomes conscious, the brain runs ahead, and the body registers its early verdict, as a shift in heart rate, a tightening, a faint surge. Those tuned to their inner signals catch this whisper and act on it. Those who cannot feel it must wait for the slower machinery of conscious thought. Intuition in this light is not magic and not nonsense. It is the body sensing a pattern and signaling its conclusion through the heart, the gut, the breath, ahead of language. The phrase "to trust your gut" turns out to be almost literal. The quality of that trust depends on how well you can hear what the gut is actually saying. Some people are simply better listeners to themselves. Here is something that sounds obvious until you look closely. You feel thirsty, so you drink, and within a minute or two, the thirst fades, and you feel satisfied. But water takes far longer than a minute to leave the stomach, enter the blood, and reach the cells that were short of it. So why does the thirst vanish almost the moment you swallow? Because thirst was never a simple alarm for a body already dry. It is a forecast. Sensors in your throat and gut measure the water as it goes down and tell the brain, in effect, relief is on the way. Switch the thirst off now. The feeling lifts before a single cell is rehydrated, because the body is predicting the future rather than reporting the present. The same foresight runs in the other direction. Thirst rises before dehydration becomes dangerous, the body reading the trend and warning you early, while there is still time to act easily. This is interoception working not as a mirror but as a weather forecast, anticipating need rather than waiting for crisis. Your body is quietly running ahead of itself all the time, guarding against problems before they fully form. The sensations you trust as simple reports are often educated guesses about what comes next. You reach for a doorknob in winter and feel the cold of it, and you would swear that cold is part of touching the metal. It is not. The sense of temperature is its own system running on its own dedicated nerves, entirely separate from the touch that tells you the knob is smooth and hard. Stranger still, hot and cold are not two ends of one scale to your body. They are sensed by different receptors, warmth by one set of nerve endings, cold by another, each firing its own signal up its own line. This is why you can press an ice cube and a warm cup to nearby patches of skin and feel each distinctly two separate channels reporting at once. There is even an odd trick that exposes the seams of the system. Touch interlaced warm and cold bars at the same time in the right arrangement, and the brain can misread the pattern as burning heat, a sensation called thermal grill illusion, painful from stimuli that are merely cool and mild. The unified feeling of temperature you take for granted is assembled from separate streams the brain weaves together. What feels like one simple sensation is really several working in quiet coordination beneath your notice. Bite into a chili pepper, and your mouth floods with heat, your eyes water, you reach for something to cool the burn. Yet nothing in your mouth is actually hot. No temperature has risen. So why does it feel like fire? Because the chemical in chili, capsaicin, reaches into your nerves and pulls the exact lever that real heat pulls. There is a receptor in your sensory nerves that normally fires when temperature climbs toward the point of harm, warning you away from a flame or boiling water. Capsaicin binds to that same receptor and triggers it directly, and the brain, receiving the identical signal it would get from genuine heat, concludes that your mouth is burning. The sensation is real. The heat is an illusion. Your body has been fooled at the level of the nerve itself, deceived by a molecule that mimics the language of fire. This is why cold water barely helps, since the burn is not on the surface to be washed away, and why the sting is the same whether the pepper is warm or chilled. Plants evolved this trick to discourage being eaten, and humans strangely learn to seek the false fire out. You can crave a sensation your own nerves cannot tell from danger. The trick runs the other way too, and just as completely. Breathe in after a mint or rub a strong balm on sore skin, and a clean coolness spreads through it, as though a cold draft had passed over. Yet nothing has cooled. The temperature has not moved at all. Menthol, the compound in mint, does to cold what chili does to heat. There is a receptor in your nerves that normally fires when temperature falls, telling the brain that the air or the water has turned cool. Menthol binds to that receptor and switches it on directly, with no actual chill present, and the brain dutifully reports a coolness that exists only in the signal. This is why mint feels refreshing on a hot day, though it changes nothing about your real temperature, and why certain ointments seem to bathe an aching muscle in cold relief. Two opposite sensations, heat from the pepper and cold from the mint, both produced by molecules quietly impersonating temperature at the nerve. It is humbling in a way to learn how directly your sensations can be authored from the outside. What you feel is not always what is happening. It is what your nerves have been persuaded to say. It is natural to assume that pain is just touch grown, too strong pressure, or heat pushed past the point you can bear. That seems obvious. It is wrong. Pain has its own complete sensory system, with its own specialized nerve endings, called nociceptors, scattered throughout your skin, your muscles, your organs tuned specifically to detect damage or its threat. These are not the same nerves that tell you a surface is smooth or a touch is gentle. They are a separate warning network, firing only when something crosses into harm, carrying their alarm along their own fast and slow pathways to the brain. This is why pain can arrive without any touch at all, from a cramping muscle deep inside, from inflammation, from a nerve misfiring with no injury present. And it is why the experience of pain can be turned up or down by the brain itself, dulled in the heat of an emergency, sharpened by fear or exhaustion. Because pain is not a raw reading, but a judgment the brain assembles about danger. Soldiers have walked on broken legs, unaware, until the crisis passed. The body decides how loud to make the alarm. Pain is not the world pressing on you. It is your own nervous system's verdict on how much that pressure matters. We spend so much of life wishing pain away that it is worth meeting the few people who were born without it. There exists a rare genetic condition in which a person feels no physical pain whatsoever from birth for their entire life. It sounds at first like a gift. It is closer to a sentence. Children with this condition bite through their tongues without noticing, scald themselves on hot surfaces and feel nothing, walk on a broken ankle until it is ruined, because the alarm that would stop the rest of us never sounds. Parents must watch them, constantly checking for injuries the child cannot report, for fevers that signal an infection raging unfelt. Many do not survive childhood. Those who do learn to navigate the world by rule and vigilance rather than sensation, inspecting their own bodies the way the rest of us simply feel them. The condition reveals with painful clarity what pain is actually for. It is not cruelty. It is the body's most honest guardian, the signal that keeps you whole by making harm impossible to ignore. To live without it is to lose your most faithful warning. The thing we most want to escape is in truth protecting us at every moment. Run a fingertip slowly across the back of your other hand. What you feel seems like a single sensation, the simple fact of touch. It is anything but single. Your skin holds several distinct kinds of sensors, each built for a different quality of contact, all firing together to compose what feels like one seamless experience. One type detects steady pressure, the firm push of an object resting against you. Another responds only to the moment of contact and release, catching the lightest brush of a feather as it drags across the hairs. Another, buried deeper, senses vibration, the faint buzz of a phone, or the texture of a surface rushing under your moving finger. Still another reads the stretch of the skin as your hand opens or closes. Each of these has its own nerve, its own speed, its own specialty, and the brain blends their separate reports into the unified feel of touching something. This is why you can tell silk from sandpaper without looking, why you feel a single insect land on your arm in the dark. What seems like the most basic sense you own is in fact a small orchestra, many instruments playing as one. Even the simplest touch is a collaboration you never notice happening. An itch seems too small a thing to hold a mystery. Yet for a long time, scientists assumed an itch was just a faint cousin of pain, a mild version of the same alarm traveling the same nerves at a lower volume. Only recently did they discover this was wrong. The itch has its own private pathway, its own dedicated nerve fibers and signaling chemistry, separate from the system that carries pain. This is why the two behave so differently. Pain makes you withdraw, pull your hand from the flame. An itch makes you do the opposite, reach toward it, scratch at it, engage the very spot that bothers you. They are near opposites in behavior because they are distinct systems, not points on one line. Stranger still, scratching relieves an itch by producing a small, sharp burst of pain, which briefly drowns the itch signal out, one system quieting the other for a moment before the itch creeps back. The fact that something as ordinary as an itch hid its own nervous system until our own era is a quiet reminder of how much remains uncharted in the body. The most familiar sensations can still hold secrets. We are even now only beginning to map ourselves. You are in a room facing away, absorbed in something, and a feeling creeps over you. Someone is watching. You turn and you are right, their eyes are on you. It feels uncanny, almost like a power, and people have believed for centuries that the gaze itself carries something we can sense. The truth is quieter and in its own way more interesting. There is a real mechanism, but it lives in the edges of your ordinary vision. Your peripheral sight takes in far more than you consciously notice, including faint movement and the orientation of faces at the very margin of your visual field. A head turning toward you, the pale of an eye angling your way, registers below awareness, and the brain, which is exquisitely tuned to detect faces and gaze, flags it as worth your attention. You feel the result, the sudden certainty, without ever knowing what tipped you off. There is also a simpler reason: it feels so reliable. You remember the times you turned and were right, and quietly forget the times you turned and no one was there. The sense of being watched is real, but it is built from ordinary vision working at the edges, not from anything passing through the air between you. Hold your gaze fixed on a single point ahead of you, and notice without moving your eyes how much of the world still hovers at the sides. It is blurry out there, colorless and vague, yet it is not empty. Your peripheral vision is poor at detail, but remarkably alert to two things: movement and faces. The very things that once meant safety or threat to a creature that needed to know what was approaching. This is the engine behind that prickle of being watched. A person at the far edge of your sight shifts their head toward you, and though you could not describe them, could not say their hair or their clothing, some part of your visual system caught the change and sounded a small note of alarm. The conscious mind receives only the conclusion, the feeling that attention has landed on you, with no memory of the clue that produced it. It is a strange arrangement to be informed by a part of yourself you cannot directly hear. Much of perception works this way, the loud announcement of a result whose origins stay hidden. You are always seeing more than you know you see. The watcher at the edge of the room was caught by a sentinel you never consciously posted. For most people, the senses keep to their own rooms. Sound stays sound, color stays color, taste stays taste. But for a small number, the walls between these rooms were never fully built, and the senses flow into one another in ways that sound invented until you meet someone who lives it. A person hears a piece of music and sees colors bloom and move in the air before them. Another reads the number 5 and perceives it always as green, or tastes a specific flavor at the sound of a certain name. This is synesthesia, and it is not imagination or metaphor. Brain imaging shows that in these people, hearing a sound genuinely activates the regions that process color, the cross wiring real and physical. It tends to be consistent across a lifetime. the same word triggering the same color year after year, and it often runs in families woven into how the brain was built. Far from a disorder, many who have it treasure it, finding the world richer for the blending. It reveals something about all of us, that the separateness of the senses is not absolute, but constructed, and in some minds, the construction simply took a different, more porous shape. Consider that the tidy separation of your senses, sound here, color there, taste somewhere else, is not a law of nature, but a habit of wiring, and one that can be built differently. Synesthesia, where senses merge, passes down through families, which tells us it is rooted in how the brain is physically assembled, written in part into inheritance. In the developing brain, the regions that handle different senses start out far more connected than they end up, and ordinary development prunes those links back, sorting the senses into their separate channels. In synesthetes, some of that early cross-wiring is thought to remain, the pruning less complete, the rooms left with doors between them. What makes this quietly profound is what it implies about everyone. The blending is not an error grafted onto a normal brain. It is closer to a glimpse of a more connected state we all began in, before development drew the lines. Even in people without synesthesia, the senses lean on one another constantly, sound shaping how we read, a face smell, altering what we taste. The walls are real, but they are thinner than they feel. And in some people, they were simply never sealed. We are all underneath, more woven together than we appear. You may remember it from a school diagram. The tongue divided into neat regions, sweet at the tip, bitter at the back, sour and salty along the sides, each taste assigned its own territory. It is one of the most widely taught facts about the body. It is also entirely false. The famous tongue map traces back to a misreading of old research. A small study whose results were exaggerated and then copied from textbook to textbook for nearly a century until almost everyone had seen it. The reality is that every taste can be sensed across the whole surface of the tongue. The taste buds for sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and savory are mingled together everywhere, with only slight differences in sensitivity from place to place. Nothing like the bold map suggested. You can prove it yourself by placing something sweet at the back of your tongue and tasting its sweetness perfectly well. What lingers in this story is how a confident, tidy diagram outlived the truth simply because it was easy to draw and easy to repeat. A clear picture can be more persuasive than an accurate one. Sometimes the things everyone knows are only the things everyone copied. For a long time, the West counted 4 basic tastes: sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and felt the list was complete. Yet there was a 5th all along, present in nearly every kitchen, felt by everyone, and somehow without a name. It is the deep, savory roundness of simmered broth, of aged cheese, of ripe tomatoes and cured meat. The quality that makes certain foods taste full and satisfying in a way the other 4 cannot explain. A Japanese scientist named it just over a century ago, calling it umami, after isolating the compound responsible, a form of glutamate that the tongue detects through its own dedicated receptors. The West was slow to accept it, reluctant to add to a list that had stood so long. And only in recent decades was umami confirmed as a true basic taste with its own biological machinery. What is striking is that people had been tasting it their whole lives, cooking to enhance it, craving it, without a word to hold it. The sensation existed long before the name arrived to catch it. It is a reminder that even our most direct experiences can go unrecognized, until someone finally points and says there that that is a thing. Naming is its own kind of seeing. Here is a sense that may be unfolding in your mouth right now, below the threshold of your notice. For years, fat was thought to be something we perceive only through texture and smell, the richness and slipperiness of it, not a true taste in its own right. That view is shifting. Evidence increasingly suggests the tongue carries receptors that detect fat directly, responding to the fatty acids in food, the way other receptors respond to sweetness or salt. Researchers have even proposed a name for it, sometimes called oleogustus, a sixth basic taste, alongside the established five. The sensation on its own is not pleasant, a faint bitterness or rancidness when fat is tasted in isolation, which may be exactly the point. A warning system for spoiled or excessive fat woven into the tongue. People differ in how sensitive they are to it, and some studies hint that those who taste fat less keenly may be drawn to eat more of it. The science is still settling, the case not yet closed, which is part of what makes it compelling. We tend to assume our senses are fully catalogued, every channel known. Yet here, on the most familiar surface of the body, a sense may still be coming into focus. There is a quiet structural fact about smell that helps explain its strange power over us. Nearly every sense you have, sight, sound, touch, taste, sends its signals first to a central way station deep in the brain, a hub that sorts and routes incoming information before passing it onward to be consciously perceived. Smell does not. Smell alone bypasses that relay entirely. The signals from your nose travel a short, direct route into regions tied closely to emotion and memory, arriving in those deep ancient areas before the thinking, analyzing parts of the brain have weighed in at all. This is why a scent can move you before you have even identified it, why the feeling often comes first and the recognition second. The architecture is unusually intimate. Smell wired straight into the seat of feeling and remembrance, skipping the orderly processing the other senses must wait through. It is the oldest of the senses in evolutionary terms, present in the earliest creatures, and its wiring still reflects that ancient priority, a direct line laid down before the brain grew its more deliberate machinery. You do not so much perceive a smell as feel it land. No other sense reaches you by such a private door. It has happened to nearly everyone. A scent drifts past, and without warning you are somewhere else. Years or decades gone, a kitchen, a person, a season returned, whole and sudden, far more alive than any photograph could make it. This is no accident of feeling. It follows directly from the way smell is wired, that private door straight into the regions of emotion and memory. Because scent enters the brain so close to where memories are formed and stored, a smell can act like a key cut, precisely for a single locked door, opening a moment you had not thought of in years and could not have summoned on purpose. The memories smell retrieves tend to be older, more emotional, and more vivid than those triggered by sight or sound, often reaching back to childhood, often arriving with the original feeling intact, rather than merely the facts. Researchers have a name for this, sometimes called the Proust effect, after the writer who described a flood of childhood memory unlocked by a scent. There is something tender in it. A part of your past you believed was gone, is not gone, only waiting, held in storage, needing the right scent to release it. You carry more of your life than you know. For a long time the nose was treated as the dull sense, the crude one, vastly outmatched by the dog and barely worth measuring. The old textbooks claimed humans could tell apart only about 10,000 smells, a modest number that made the nose seem almost an afterthought. Recent work has overturned this completely. When researchers tested how finely people could discriminate between complex mixtures of scent molecules, the estimate leapt to something staggering, a figure approaching 1 trillion distinguishable smells. The human nose, it turns out, is not crude at all, but extraordinarily sensitive, capable of detecting and separating an immense range of odors, many at concentrations almost impossibly faint. We simply do not attend to it. Living in a visual world, leaning on our eyes, we let this enormous capacity run quietly in the background, noticed only when a smell is strong or strange. The dog still outperforms us in tracking, but the gap is far narrower than the old story claimed, and in some sense, humans are the more sensitive. It is humbling to learn that a power this vast has been sitting in the middle of your face all along, underused, underestimated. You can perceive a trillion different things and rarely stop to notice any of them. Picture a newborn in the first hours of life. The eyes cannot yet focus the world, a blur of light and shadow faces, still meaningless shapes. Yet the infant is not lost because another sense is already sharp and already working. A newborn can recognize its own mother by smell alone, within days of being born, drawn unerringly toward her scent. Place a nursing infant between two breast pads, one its mother's and one a stranger's, and the baby will reliably turn toward the mother's, a clear preference, shown before sight could possibly guide it. This recognition is learned astonishingly fast. In the earliest days, the scent of the mother becoming a fixed point in a world the eyes cannot yet make sense of. It works the other way too. Mothers, often able to identify their own infant by smell after only a brief time together. There is something quietly moving in this, that the very first knowing between a parent and child runs not through the eyes, but through scent, a recognition older and deeper than sight. Before the baby can see your face, it already knows your smell, already finds its way to you through the air. The first map a human draws of another person is made of scent. Consider the problem a migrating bird must solve. It crosses thousands of miles over featureless ocean and unfamiliar land, often at night, and arrives at the same destination its kind has reached for generations. How does it hold its course? With no map, no landmarks, no instruction. The leading answer is that the bird can sense something we cannot, the Earth's own magnetic field. The invisible lines that run from pole to pole. There is growing evidence that certain birds perceive this field through a remarkable mechanism in their eyes, where specialized molecules react to magnetism in a way that may let the bird actually see direction, a faint pattern of light, or shadow laid over the visible world, shifting as the bird turns its head. If this is right, then north is not something the bird calculates, but something it perceives, woven into vision itself. The science is still being worked out, the exact mechanism debated, the details genuinely uncertain, but the core finding stands that some animals possess a sense of the planet's magnetism entirely closed to us. We share the world with creatures who feel a force we cannot feel at all. Navigating by a sense we do not even have words to imagine. Here is where the story turns toward us and grows stranger. The molecule thought to let birds sense magnetism, a light-sensitive protein called cryptochrome, is not unique to birds. A version of it exists in the human eye as well. When researchers placed the human form of this protein into other creatures whose own magnetic sense had been disabled, it restored the ability, working as a functional magnetic sensor, which raises a quiet, unsettling question. We carry the same machinery. Does it do anything in us? The honest answer is that no one knows. There is no clear evidence that humans can consciously sense magnetic fields, and most cannot point north with their eyes closed. Yet some recent experiments have detected subtle changes in human brain activity in response to shifting magnetic fields, hints that some part of us may register the planet's magnetism below all awareness. Nothing is settled. The findings are early contested, far from proven. But the possibility lingers that a sense we assumed belonged only to birds and turtles might run faintly, silently. In us as well, a vestige we cannot feel. You may be carrying a sixth sense you will never know you have, doing who knows what in the quiet behind your eyes. Some people who cannot see have learned to perceive the world through sound in a way that sounds almost impossible until you watch it. They make sharp clicks with their tongues, sending out small bursts of sound, and then listen to how those sounds return, reading the echoes off walls, doorways, parked cars, trees, from the timing and shape of what comes back. They build a sense of the space around them, its openings and obstacles, its near and far. This is echolocation, the same principle a bat uses, taught not by nature but by practice, learned by human beings determined to move through the world freely. Skilled practitioners can ride bicycles, hike unfamiliar trails, sense the size of a room and the presence of a person standing silently within it, all from the returning sound of their own clicks. It is not a vague impression, but a genuine spatial sense, precise enough to trust the body to. What this reveals is how flexible the human capacity for sensing truly is, how readily a person can build a new way of perceiving when an old one is gone. The senses are not fixed allotments. Given need and patience, a human being can learn in effect to see with sound. Follow that ability one layer deeper into the brain itself, and something profound appears. When skilled echolocators listen to their returning clicks, the part of their brain that normally handles vision becomes active, lighting up as if it were seeing. The sounds are entering through the ears, yet they are being processed in part by the visual brain. The region built to make sense of a world of light, now pressed into service, making sense of a world of sound. The brain, deprived of sight, did not let that territory fall idle. It repurposed it, routing the echoes into the machinery of vision so that the spatial information carried by sound is handled by the same regions a sighted person uses to see. In a real and measurable sense, these people are seeing with their visual cortex. Only the input arrives as echo rather than light. This is the brain's astonishing plasticity, laid bare its willingness to rebuild and reassign itself around what a person actually needs. The boundary we imagine between the senses, this is for sound, that is for sight, turns out to be far more fluid in the brain than in our intuition. What matters is the information. The brain will find a way to use it. You know right now roughly how long you have been reading. You feel time passing, the minutes accumulating, and you would call this knowledge a kind of sense. Yet pause on it, because this sense is unlike all the others. There is no organ for it. No part of the body is dedicated to time the way the eye is dedicated to light, or the ear to sound. There is no patch of skin, no chamber of fluid, no receptor that reads the passing minutes. And yet the sense is real, vivid, constant. Stranger still, it bends. The same hour can feel endless when you're bored and waiting, and vanish in an instant when you're absorbed in something you love. Time stretches and shrinks according to your attention, your emotion, your novelty, in a way no honest clock ever would. The brain assembles this sense from many sources: the pace of your thoughts, the rhythms of the body, the accumulation of new experience, weaving them into a feeling of duration that belongs to you alone. Two people in the same room can live the same hour at entirely different speeds. The most relentless fact of existence, that time moves, reaches you through a sense with no home in the body, built moment by the mind. In a sudden crisis, a fall, a near miss on the road, a moment of real danger, people often describe time slowing to a crawl, the seconds stretching strangely long, as though the world had moved into slow motion. It feels in the moment like perception itself has sped up, like you are seeing faster than time can pass. But careful study suggests something subtler is happening. Time does not actually slow, and you do not perceive faster in the instant. Instead, in a frightening moment, the brain switches into a heightened state and records memory far more densely than usual, laying down a thick, detailed trail of what is happening. Later, when you recall it, that unusual richness of memory is read by the mind as duration. So much was stored that it seems the event must have lasted longer than it did. The slowness is written in afterward, in the remembering not lived in the moment. This is why the impression is so vivid yet so hard to confirm, an illusion created by how fear shapes memory, rather than how it shapes perception. The mind, it turns out, measures time partly by how much it remembers. A dense memory feels like a long one. Think back to a summer from childhood, one of those that seem to stretch on without end, the days long and slow and full, the season feeling like a small lifetime. Now notice how quickly a summer passes as an adult gone almost before you have settled into it. The hours have not changed. What has changed is novelty. In childhood, nearly everything is new each day, bringing first experiences, fresh sights, things never seen before, and the brain, busy laying down so many new memories, registers the time as full and therefore long. As you age, the world grows familiar, more of each day folding into routines already known. Fewer fresh memories formed, and time seems to compress, the years sliding by faster and faster. Duration in memory is built largely from novelty, and novelty fades as life grows familiar. This is the quiet secret of why childhood summers felt eternal and grown years feel brief. It also offers a gentle suggestion that seeking out the new, the unfamiliar, the unrehearsed can thicken time again, slow the rush, give the years back some of their old fullness. You cannot add hours to your life, but you may be able to make the ones you have feel longer. There is a particular kind of knowing that arrives just before the body does something. The tickle that tells you a sneeze is coming, the lurch that warns you are about to be sick, the sudden certainty in a stumble that you are going to fall before you have fallen. In each case, you sense the event slightly before it happens, a brief forewarning from inside your own body. This is interoception again, but turned toward the immediate future, the body forecasting its own next move and handing you the prediction a moment early. It is genuinely useful. The warning of a sneeze lets you turn away or cover your face. The lurch of nausea sends you toward a sink. The sense of falling, fastest of all, triggers your arms to fly out and brace before your mind has even named the danger. These forecasts run ahead of conscious thought because they have to, because by the time you reasoned it through, it would be too late. Your body is constantly modeling what is about to happen to it, and acting on that model before you are aware. The self you experience is always running a little behind a body that is already preparing for what comes next. You have likely felt this without naming it. You flinch or freeze, or your heart leaps, and only an instant later do you understand why the danger registering in the body before it registers in the mind. A shape in the road, a sudden movement at the edge of sight, a wrongness in a familiar place, and the alarm fires first, the thinking second. This is not imagination. The brain has fast pathways for threat that bypass slow, deliberate analysis, routing a rough warning straight to the systems that prepare the body to react. The surge of adrenaline, the tightening muscles, the readiness to run or fight. These pathways trade accuracy for speed, sometimes triggering on a coiled garden hose that turns out to be no snake at all. Because over-evolution, a false alarm cost little while a missed real threat could cost everything. So the body braces first and asks questions later, and you live the result as a feeling of dread that precedes understanding. It can seem in the moment like a premonition, a knowing without cause. It is something more grounded and no less remarkable. A nervous system built to protect you faster than you can think, sounding the alarm before you have seen what set it off. The phrase "a gut feeling" sounds like a metaphor, a figure of speech for intuition, but has nothing to do with the gut itself. It is not a metaphor. Lining the walls of your digestive tract is a vast network of nerve cells, so dense and so capable that scientists call it a second brain. It holds hundreds of millions of neurons, more than the spinal cord, organized into its own complex web that can operate with surprising independence, managing digestion largely on its own. And it talks. A great stream of signals runs upward from this gut network to the brain, far more traffic going up than coming down, the gut constantly reporting its state, its contents, its disturbances. Much of this never reaches awareness, but it shapes how you feel in ways you cannot trace. Coloring, mood alertness, unease. When something is wrong in the gut, the brain often knows before you do, registering it as a vague heaviness or disquiet rather than a clear thought. So a gut feeling is quite literally a feeling from the gut, an enormous nervous system speaking to your brain in a language below words. The wisdom of the body people speak of so loosely turns out to have an actual anatomy. You think with more of yourself than your head. Serotonin is a word most people associate with the brain and with mood, the chemical tied to feelings of well-being and calm. So it surprises nearly everyone to learn where most of it actually lives. The overwhelming majority of the body's serotonin, around 90%, is produced not in the brain, but in the gut. This deep reserve in the digestive system plays its own roles there, helping to govern the movement of the intestines, but its presence points to something larger, the profound and constant conversation between the gut and the mind. The state of your gut, including the vast community of microbes that live within it, influences this chemistry, and through it can ripple outward to touch how you feel. Researchers are still mapping exactly how the gut, its bacteria, and the brain shape one another, and much remains genuinely uncertain, the science young and still unfolding. But the broad picture is no longer in doubt that what happens in the gut reaches the mind, that mood is not sealed inside the skull but tied to the body's deeper interior. The feeling that your stomach and your spirits rise and fall together is not imagined. They are linked by chemistry, in a dialogue that never stops far beneath anything you consciously think. Here is something that sounds like superstition and turns out to be measurable. Fear has a smell, and you can detect it. When a person is frightened, their sweat changes, carrying chemical signals different from the sweat of calm or exertion. In careful experiments, researchers collected sweat from people in states of fear and exposed others to it, without telling them what they were smelling. And those exposed showed real changes: heightened alertness, sharper attention to threat, a faint contagion of the fear itself. The detection happens entirely below awareness. No one consciously smelled fear, yet their bodies responded as though a warning had been received, becoming more vigilant, reading ambiguous faces as more threatening. This appears to be a form of chemical communication, ancient and silent, by which one person's alarm can prime another's, spreading caution through a group without a word or a glance. It runs in the background of crowds and rooms, a layer of signaling we participate in without knowing. When you sense that something is wrong in a tense space, that the mood has shifted toward fear, part of that knowing may be arriving through your nose, through molecules in the air you never consciously register. We are more connected to one another's inner states than we realize, joined by signals we cannot feel ourselves sending or receiving. We saw that a newborn finds its mother by scent. The recognition runs both ways, and just as strongly. Blindfold a mother shortly after birth, and present her with several infants' garments, and she can often pick out her own child's by smell alone, identifying her baby through scent with no sight, no sound, no touch to guide her. This mutual recognition forms remarkably fast in the first days, each learning the other's scent and holding on to it. The smell of a newborn even produces measurable responses in a mother's brain, activating regions tied to reward and bonding, which may help explain why so many parents describe an almost helpless love of how their baby smells. It is a two-way thread of recognition, mother and child, each carrying a scent map of the other, drawn together through the air before the relationship has any words in it. There is something quietly profound in this, that one of the first and deepest bonds a human forms is built partly of smell, a sense we rarely credit working at the foundation of love itself. Long before a child can speak your name or you can read its thoughts, you know each other by scent. The connection begins in the body, in a knowing older than language. Have you ever felt drawn to someone in a way you could not quite explain, an attraction that seemed to arrive before reason, before you knew much about them at all? Part of that pull may be reaching you through scent in signals you never consciously smell. Research suggests that human attraction is shaped, at least in part, by body odor, and in ways tied to deep biology. In some studies, people rated the natural scent of others as more or less appealing depending on subtle genetic differences related to the immune system, often preferring the scent of those whose immune genes differed from their own, a pattern that across evolution would tend to produce healthier offspring. None of this happens in awareness. No one sniffs and calculates. The preference arrives simply as a feeling: this person appeals to me, that one does not, with the chemical reasons hidden entirely from view. The science here is still debated, the findings not uniform, and much remains genuinely unsettled. But the broad possibility stands that some of what we experience as chemistry between people is closer to literal chemistry than we ever supposed. The mysterious pull toward another person may be partly a conversation between bodies conducted in scent beneath everything you think you are choosing. Some people carry an early warning system they did not ask for and cannot fully explain. Before a migraine strikes, many sufferers feel it coming, sometimes hours ahead, through a cluster of subtle changes: an odd mood, a strange craving, a heightened sensitivity to light, a yawning they cannot suppress. This phase even has a name, the prodrome, and for those who learn to read it, it offers precious time to prepare to take medicine to retreat before the full pain arrives. Something similar happens before some seizures. A person with epilepsy may feel a distinctive sensation in the period beforehand, a sign their body has learned to recognize as a warning. In each case, the body seems to know ahead of the conscious mind that a storm is gathering within it, and it sends up a quiet signal, vague but real. The exact mechanisms are still being studied, the warnings not perfectly reliable, the science incomplete. But the experience is consistent enough that many people come to trust it, to live by it, planning around a forecast their own body provides. It is a strange intimacy to be told by yourself that something is coming, to receive a warning whose source you cannot see, only feel. The body, it seems, can sound an alarm before the mind knows there is anything to fear. For some people with epilepsy, a seizure does not arrive without warning. It is preceded by a distinctive experience, brief and strange, that they come to know intimately, a herald they learn to recognize. This is called an aura, and it takes many forms depending on where in the brain the seizure begins. For some, it is a peculiar smell or taste, with no source. For others, a rising sensation in the stomach, a wave of unexplained fear, or a flood of intense familiarity, a feeling that this exact moment has happened before. For still others, it arrives as a sudden sense of profound meaning or unreality. Whatever its shape, the aura is reliable enough that people learn to trust it, using those few seconds or minutes to sit down to find safety, to brace for what follows. What makes the aura quietly fascinating is that it is itself a seizure, a small electrical disturbance in a specific region of the brain, and the unusual sensation it produces is a direct glimpse of what that region does when it fires. The strange feeling is the brain's own activity made briefly conscious. In these moments, a person experiences vividly and against their will the raw sensation of their own neurons at work. Imagine feeling your hand, its fingers, its position, the urge to clench it, and then remembering that the hand is gone, removed years ago. This is the experience of a phantom limb, and it is common among people who have lost an arm or a leg. The limb is no longer there, yet the person still feels it vividly, sometimes able to sense it moving, sometimes feeling it locked in an uncomfortable position, often feeling pain in fingers or toes that no longer exist. The phantom is not imagination or wishful memory. It arises because the brain holds a complete internal map of the body, a representation of every limb built and maintained in the nervous system, and that map does not simply vanish when a limb is lost. The region that once received signals from the missing hand remains still active, still expecting input, and continues to generate the sensation of a hand that is no longer attached. The body in the brain outlives the body in the world. This reveals something deep about how you experience yourself, that your sense of your own body is not read directly off your flesh, but constructed in the brain. A model so persistent, it can keep representing a part that is gone. You do not feel your body. You feel the brain's idea of it. Follow the phantom limb to its deeper meaning, and you arrive at something that reshapes how you understand your own existence. The reason a lost limb can still be felt is that your sense of your body does not come straight from the body itself. It comes from a model, a complete internal representation. The brain builds and constantly updates a kind of living map of your physical self. Normally, this map matches your body, closely fed by the steady stream of signals from skin, muscle, and joint, so the fit feels perfect and invisible. But the map is the thing you actually experience, not the flesh beneath it, and the two can come apart. When a limb is removed, the map can persist, still representing what is no longer there. When the map and the body disagree, strange things happen. Phantom sensations, distorted feelings of size and shape, the deep weirdness of a self that does not quite line up with its physical form. This is one of the quietly unsettling truths about being a person. The body you feel yourself to be is a construction, a model rendered in the brain, usually faithful but not identical to the body that exists. You live inside a representation of yourself. Most of the time you never notice the gap. If the brain's body map can generate pain in a limb that is gone, then perhaps the map can be reached, persuaded, eased. This is the idea behind a treatment that is almost startling in its simplicity. A person with a missing hand, suffering phantom pain, sits with a mirror placed so that the reflection of their intact hand appears where the missing one would be. When they look, they see two hands again, and as they move the real hand, the reflection moves in perfect time, so the brain receives the vivid sight of the lost limb, moving freely and without pain. For many people, this gentle illusion brings relief. The phantom hand, often felt as clenched or cramped, can seem to open and relax, the pain easing, because the brain's map has been given new evidence, the sight of a limb that moves and is well. It works by speaking to the model directly, updating it through vision, soothing a pain that lived not in flesh but in representation. There is something quietly hopeful in this, that suffering rooted in the brain's image of the body can sometimes be reached and eased by giving that image something new to see. The mind built the phantom carefully. It can be helped to set it down. Until you read this sentence, you had no idea where your tongue was. Now you do. You can feel it resting against your teeth, or the floor of your mouth, suddenly present, slightly awkward, impossible to ignore. Nothing changed in your mouth. The only thing that moved was your attention. This small experience reveals something large about how perception works. Your body is sending a constant flood of signals to the brain, far more than you could ever attend to, and almost all of it is filtered out before it reaches awareness held below the surface, so that you can think and act without drowning in sensation. The feeling of your tongue was there all along, available, simply not selected. Attention is the gate, deciding moment by moment which of the body's countless signals you will actually experience. This is why you can forget the clothing on your skin, the glasses on your face, the chair beneath you, until a word or a thought turns the gate toward them and they flood back into being felt. You are not perceiving most of what your body senses. You are perceiving the small portion attention has chosen. The rest waits in the dark, real but unfelt, ready to return the instant you look toward it. Consider what it would be like to feel everything at once. Every thread of clothing against your skin, every shift of every joint, the pressure of your tongue, the weight of your eyelids, the steady churn of digestion, the pulse in 100 vessels, the air moving in and out, all of it constantly with nothing held back. You could not function. You could not think a single thought. So buried would you be under the roar of your own body. This is why the brain does the opposite of what we imagine. We tend to think of perception as the brain gathering sensation, taking in as much as it can. In truth, much of the brain's work is suppression, actively hiding the vast majority of its own incoming signals, letting through only what matters, only what has changed, only what needs you now. The silence you feel in most of your body is not an absence of sensation. It is sensation deliberately withheld, filtered out, to protect your capacity to live. What reaches awareness is a tiny curated selection edited for usefulness, the rest kept quiet in service of your sanity. You experience a fraction of yourself. The fraction is chosen with care, so that there is room left over to be a person at all. Lift something heavy and you feel two distinct things. You feel the object moving, and you feel the effort, the strain, how hard you are working to move it. These seem like one experience, but they are not. The sense of effort is computed separately in the brain, distinct from the perception of the movement itself, a measure not of what your body is doing, but of how much it is costing. Remarkably, this sense of effort is generated in part by the brain's own outgoing commands, rather than by feedback from the muscles alone. As the brain sends a stronger signal to move a heavy load, it also informs itself of how strong that signal is and reads that strength as effort. This is why the same physical task can feel harder when you are tired even though the weight has not changed. Because the brain must send a stronger command to fatigued muscles and registers that increase as greater effort. The feeling of difficulty is partly the brain monitoring its own instructions. It explains the strange experience of something feeling effortful or easy in ways that do not match the actual load, the sense of strain rising and falling with your state. Effort is not measured at the muscle. It is felt as the brain listens to how loudly it must speak. Before you lift a box, you already expect how heavy it will be, and you grip it and brace for that weight without thinking. Most of the time, you are right. The brain predicts an object's weight from sight alone, from its size, its apparent material, your memory of similar things, and it prepares your muscles in advance to handle exactly that much. You feel this prediction clearly when it fails. Lift a box you expect to be heavy and find it empty, and your arm flies up too fast. You stagger the lightness, almost startling, because you applied force for a weight that was not there. The opposite jolts you the other way, a small object that turns out to be dense and unyielding, refusing to move when you expected it to rise easily. These moments expose the prediction that is normally invisible, running silently before every lift, shaping your grip and your effort before your hand has even closed. Your body is not merely reacting to weight. It is forecasting it, committing to a guess, and feeling the surprise when the guess is wrong. This is perception, working ahead of contact. The brain modeling the world a step before you touch it, so that by the time you act, you are already prepared for what you have not yet felt. You can feel when something is wet. A damp cloth, a spilled drink, rain on your skin, the wetness is unmistakable. So it comes as a genuine surprise to learn that your skin has no sensor for wetness at all. There is no receptor in the body that detects water as such, no dedicated nerve for the quality of being wet. The sensation is inferred, assembled by the brain from other signals it does have. When something wet touches you, your skin registers two things together: a drop in temperature, because wet things tend to feel cool, and a particular kind of pressure and texture as the moisture spreads. The brain combines these cold plus that specific feel and concludes wetness, producing a sensation so convincing you would never guess it was constructed. You can be fooled. A cold, smooth object can feel slightly wet, though it is perfectly dry, because it triggers the same combination the brain reads as moisture. The feeling of wetness is not a direct report from the world. It is a deduction, a conclusion the brain draws from clues presented to you as plain sensation. Even something as simple and certain as feeling wet turns out to be the brain making an inference, and handing you the answer as though it were a fact. When you feel a chill or a wave of strong emotion, The skin on your arms tightens into goosebumps, tiny bumps rising as the fine hairs stand on end. It happens automatically beyond your control, and it is a kind of fossil, a reflex left over from ancestors who looked quite different from us. In furred animals, this same reflex raises the coat, and it serves real purposes. Lifted fur traps a layer of air for warmth in the cold, which is why goosebumps come with a chill. And raised fur makes a frightened or threatened animal look larger and more formidable, which is why strong emotion can trigger them too. Our ancestors carried thick body hair, and the reflex worked for them as it works for other mammals. We lost the fur, we kept the reflex. So now the same ancient response fires in us, dutifully raising hairs too sparse to do anything, lifting a coat that is no longer there. It is a small, visible inheritance from a more furred past, a piece of old biology still running in a body that has moved on. Every time the bumps rise on your arm, you are watching a reflex older than your species perform a task your body can no longer benefit from. The gesture remains long after its purpose departed. The fine hairs covering most of your body are not merely leftover decoration. They are sensors, and surprisingly sensitive ones. Each hair sits in a follicle wrapped with nerve endings, and when the hair is bent even slightly, those nerves fire. This means a touch can be detected by the hair before anything reaches the skin at all. A feather drifting toward your arm, an insect about to land, a hand approaching in the dark may be sensed in the moment it disturbs the hairs, an instant before contact with the skin itself. The hairs act like a delicate outer field of detection, extending your sense of touch just beyond your surface, catching the lightest disturbances that bare skin might miss. This is why a single hair shifting can send a small shiver through you, why you can feel the faint approach of something before it truly arrives. It is an early warning. At the very edge of the body evolved to catch crawling things and gentle contact before they reach you. The boundary of your touch is not your skin. It reaches a little further out into the tips of the hairs, a fine and sensitive frontier that feels the world coming before the world quite touches you. A piece of music swells toward a certain moment, and suddenly it happens. A shiver runs through you, the hairs on your arms rise, a wave of something passes over your skin. Many people know this feeling, sometimes called a frisson, a physical response to music or beauty that the body produces, seemingly on its own. It is not imagined or merely poetic. It is a measurable physiological event. The same machinery that gives you goosebumps from cold firing instead in response to sound, to a key change, a soaring voice, a moment of unexpected beauty in what you are hearing. The body reacts to the music as though something significant has happened, sending a real physical shiver through you. Not everyone experiences it, and those who do tend to be people who engage with music deeply and emotionally, which has interested researchers about what the response reveals. What strikes me about this is the strangeness of it, that a pattern of sound with no danger and no cold and no touch can reach into your body and raise your hair, can move you physically through beauty alone. The chill at a piece of music is your body confessing without your permission that something has touched you. Beauty, it turns out, can be felt on the skin. Follow that shiver inward into the brain, and you find that it is not a trivial reflex, but a sign of something significant happening within you. When people feel that wave of chills at a powerful moment in music, brain studies reveal a genuine surge in the brain's reward system, a release of the same chemistry tied to pleasure, to the things the brain treats as deeply valuable. The peak of the music, the moment of the shiver, lines up with a peak in this reward activity, the brain responding to beauty with the machinery it normally reserves for its most basic rewards. This places the experience of being moved by music alongside the brain's deepest forms of pleasure, suggesting that the awe we feel at beauty is not a soft or secondary thing, but rooted in the core reward circuitry of the brain. The shiver is the outward edge of an inward surge. Awe made briefly physical, the body registering on the skin what the brain is celebrating within. There is something quietly affirming in this, that the human response to beauty is written so deeply into us, that a piece of music can reach the very center of what the brain values. We are built not only to survive, but to be moved. The capacity for awe is part of our wiring. Think back to the last time a piece of music gave you that shiver, that rising of the hairs along your arms, that wave that passed through you before you could explain it. Notice the order of it. The body responded first. The shiver came before any thought, before you could have said why this moment moved you, before the mind had analyzed the chord or named the feeling. The skin knew before you did. This is the quiet pattern beneath so much of what we have explored, that the body often responds ahead of conscious understanding, registering meaning, beauty, danger, connection, before the thinking mind catches up. You did not decide to be moved. Your body was already moved, and only afterward did awareness arrive to find the response already underway. There is a kind of wisdom in this that runs beneath all your deliberate thought, a body that feels and reacts, and knows in its own way faster and more directly than reason. The shiver at the music is a small, clear instance of it, a moment when you can catch your body responding to the world before you have understood the world at all. You are not only the voice in your head, you are also the body that felt the music first. Most of the time your senses agree, and you never notice them at all. But two of them, balance and vision, can fall into disagreement, and when they do, your body pays for it in a way you know all too well. Your inner ear reports motion, the swaying, the turning, the movement of your head through space. Your eyes report what they see. Normally, these two tell the same story, and the brain blends them seamlessly. But put them at odds, and trouble begins. The brain receives two honest accounts that do not match your ears, insisting you are moving, while your eyes insist you are still, or the reverse, and it cannot reconcile them. The result is motion sickness, that creeping nausea, the cold sweat, the misery of a body caught between conflicting reports. Why the brain answers this conflict with sickness specifically is still not fully settled, though one idea holds that the brain interprets the sensory mismatch as a sign of poisoning and responds as it would to a toxin. Whatever the reason, the experience is a window onto how perception works, on the constant invisible agreement between your senses that you only notice when it breaks. Your steady experience of the world depends on a harmony you never hear until the day two senses begin to argue. Here is that conflict made concrete in an experience almost everyone has suffered. You are in a moving car, and you look down to read, and within minutes, a queasiness rises that can ruin the rest of the journey. The reason is precise. As you read, your eyes are fixed on the still page, on the unmoving words and the steady interior of the car, and they report faithfully that you are not moving. But your inner ear knows otherwise. It feels every acceleration, every curve, every bump and sway of the car, and reports just as faithfully that you are very much in motion. The brain receives both messages at once: stillness from the eyes, movement from the ears, and the contradiction is what makes you ill. This is why looking up and out at the passing landscape helps, because now your eyes catch the motion too, and the two senses come back into agreement, the conflict resolved. The cure is to let your vision see the movement your ears already feel. It is a small daily demonstration of how much your comfort depends on your senses telling the same story. Break their agreement with something as simple as a book, and your own body will turn against the journey, undone by a disagreement it cannot ignore. There is a situation in which the human sense of balance becomes not just unreliable, but dangerous, and learning to override it is a matter of survival. When a pilot flies into thick cloud with no horizon, no ground, no visible reference at all, the inner ear can deceive them completely. Deprived of sight, the balance system can generate powerful, convincing sensations that are simply wrong, telling the pilot They are level when they are turning, or climbing when they are descending. A false certainty about which way is up that the body insists upon with total conviction. This is spatial disorientation, and it has killed experienced pilots who followed the overwhelming feeling of their own bodies straight into the ground, trusting a sense that had quietly failed them. The only defense is to refuse to trust it. Pilots are trained to ignore what their bodies tell them and believe their instruments instead, to fly by the cold readings of dials, even when every feeling screams that the instruments are wrong. It is a profound thing to ask of a person, to override the deepest sense of up and down, to trust a machine over your own body's certainty. Yet, in the cloud, the body lies, and only the discipline to distrust it keeps the pilot alive. Sometimes survival means not believing what you feel. Your sense that your body is yours, that these hands belong to you, feels absolute beyond any possible doubt. It is more fragile than you would believe, and it can be hijacked with a strikingly simple trick. Place a rubber hand on a table in front of a person positioned where their own hand might be, and hide their real hand from view. Then stroke both the rubber hand and the hidden real hand at the same time in the same way, with the person watching the rubber one being touched. Within a minute or two, something uncanny happens. The person begins to feel the touch as coming from the rubber hand, and then begins to feel that the rubber hand is theirs, that it has somehow become part of their body. The illusion can grow so strong that if the rubber hand is suddenly threatened, the person flinches and reacts as though their own hand were in danger. The brain, seeing a hand touched exactly when it feels touch, concludes that the seen hand must be its own, and rewrites the sense of self to include a piece of rubber. This reveals how the feeling of owning your body is constructed from matching sights and sensations, and how readily that construction can be fooled. Your body belongs to you only as long as your senses agree that it does. What unsettles me most about the rubber hand illusion is how quickly it works. Not over hours of conditioning, not through deep suggestion, but within seconds to a minute or two, the brain abandons its real hand and claims a piece of rubber as part of the body. So little is required. Just the sight of a fake hand being touched in time with a felt touch, and the deep, lifelong certainty of where your body ends begins to dissolve and reform around an object that is not you. This speed is the revelation. It tells us that the sense of owning your own body is not a fixed, deep-rooted fact, but an ongoing computation, constantly recalculated from the evidence of the senses, and therefore constantly open to revision. The brain is always asking, in effect, what is me and what is not, and answering from whatever the senses currently report. Give it convincing enough evidence, and it will draw the boundary of yourself in a new place, fast, without resistance. The self you feel solid and certain is being continuously rebuilt, and a simple illusion can catch it in the act of redrawing its own edges. You are not permanently anchored in your body. You are continuously deciding beneath awareness that this body is you. If a rubber hand can be claimed as your own, perhaps the sense of self can be pushed further still, and it can. Using the same principles, researchers have created experiences in which a person feels they have left their own body entirely. The setup uses a camera and a display so that a person sees their own body from the outside from a position behind themselves, while their back is touched, and they watch the touch happening to the body in front of them. As with the rubber hand, the matching of seen and felt touch does its work, and the brain begins to locate the self. Not where the body is, but where the seeing eyes seem to be behind and apart. People report a vivid sense of being outside their own body, of looking at themselves from elsewhere. An out-of-body experience produced entirely by ordinary sight and touch placed in deliberate conflict. There is nothing mystical in it. It is the same construction of self that builds your normal experience, simply fed misleading evidence, until it places you outside your own form. This points to something profound, that the feeling of being located inside your body, of being here and not there, is itself constructed and can be moved. Where you feel yourself to be is not fixed. It is computed and it can be relocated. Step back from these illusions and a single deep truth comes into focus. The boundary between you and the world, the line where your body ends and everything else begins, feels like the most basic given of existence. It is not a given. It is constructed, built moment by moment by the brain, from the agreement of the senses, and because it is built, it can be rebuilt. The rubber hand showed it expanding to include something that is not you. The out-of-body experience showed it moving you outside yourself. In daily life, this boundary can stretch in subtler ways, extending into a tool you use skillfully, so that a driver feels the edges of the car, or a person feels the tip of a cane as part of their reach. The self is not sealed at the skin. It is a flexible construction drawn and redrawn from sensory evidence capable of growing, shrinking, and shifting. This is strange to sit with, because nothing feels more certain than where you stop and the world starts. Yet that certainty is an achievement of the brain, not a fact of nature, an ongoing act of construction so seamless you take it for solid ground. You are not given your edges. You build them continuously, and they are not as fixed as they feel. Hunger and fullness feel like simple, honest reports, your body telling you plainly whether it needs food. But these senses, like the others, are constructions, and they can mislead you often by running behind the truth. Fullness, in particular, arrives late. When you eat, it takes time, often around 20 minutes, for the signals of a filling stomach and the body's chemical messengers to reach the brain and register as satisfaction. During that delay, you can eat well past what you actually need, feeling still hungry simply because the message of fullness has not yet caught up, then finding yourself uncomfortably overfull once it finally lands. This lag is part of why eating slowly tends to leave people more comfortably satisfied, with less giving the sense of fullness time to arrive before too much has been eaten. Hunger too can deceive, stirred by habit, by the sight or smell of food, by emotion, by thirst, mistaken for hunger rather than by any true need. These senses are not precise gauges of what your body holds. They are estimates shaped by timing and circumstance, sometimes accurate, sometimes well off. The feeling that you need food or have had enough is not a direct readout of your stomach. It is a signal that can lag and wander and lie. Some senses you are born with ready and working. Others you have to learn, and one of them is so basic that we forget it was ever acquired. The feeling of a full bladder and the control that goes with it is not present at birth. An infant's bladder simply empties on its own automatically, without any sense of needing to or any ability to wait. The conscious feeling of fullness, the recognition of the signal, the capacity to hold and to release at the right time, all of this is learned, developed gradually across the early years of childhood, as the connections between bladder and brain mature, and the child slowly gains awareness and control. This is why the process takes years and unfolds at its own pace in each child. A genuine developmental achievement rather than a switch that flips. What feels like the most automatic of sensations, the plain knowledge that you need a bathroom, was once entirely absent and had to be built signal by signal over a long stretch of early life. It is a quiet reminder that even our most basic bodily senses are not always given whole at birth. Some of them are constructed slowly, learned in childhood, then forgotten so completely that we never imagined they were anything but innate. You were taught to feel yourself. Right now, until this moment, you were breathing without any awareness of it at all, in and out steadily while your attention was elsewhere entirely. Across a single day, you breathe something like 20,000 times, and you sense almost none of them, the whole vast rhythm running below notice, sustaining you without ever asking to be felt. And yet the moment attention turns toward the breath as it has now, everything changes. Suddenly you can feel each inhale the air moving, the chest rising, and oddly, the breath may begin to feel effortful or awkward, no longer automatic, as though you must now manage what your body had been doing perfectly well on its own. This is the strange double nature of breathing, that it runs automatically, yet can be taken under conscious control at any moment, sitting at the border between what the body does for you and what you do yourself. Most of life it stays on the automatic side, sensed not at all a tide that rises and falls without you. Then attention crosses the border, and the unfelt becomes felt, the automatic becomes deliberate. And you notice the most constant act of your life, as though for the first time, the breath was always there. You simply were not listening to it. When you hold your breath, the desperate building need to breathe again feels obviously like your body crying out for oxygen, running short and demanding more. That is the natural assumption. It is wrong. The urge to breathe is triggered almost entirely by something else, the rising level of carbon dioxide in your blood, the waste gas your body produces and must clear. As you hold your breath, carbon dioxide accumulates, and your body has sensitive detectors that track it closely, and it is the climb of that gas, not the fall of oxygen, that fires the overwhelming command to breathe. This distinction is not a mere curiosity. It carries real danger. It is possible to lower carbon dioxide artificially by breathing rapidly beforehand, and thereby silence the urge to breathe for far longer, while oxygen quietly drops toward dangerous levels, with no warning signal firing at all. People have lost consciousness underwater this way. The body's alarm bypassed the protective urge, fooled into silence while the real threat, oxygen starvation, crept up unannounced. The lesson is sobering. Your most basic survival signal is not watching the thing that actually keeps you alive. It is watching a proxy, the buildup of waste, and that proxy can be tricked, leaving you in danger your body never warns you of. There are people who descend on a single breath into the deep ocean, far below the surface, holding that breath for minutes that would seem impossible. And to do it, they must master one of the body's most insistent commands. Free divers train their bodies and minds to tolerate and quiet the powerful urge to breathe, the very signal that rising carbon dioxide produces. Through practice, they raise their tolerance for that mounting pressure, learning to stay calm as the command to breathe grows fierce, conserving oxygen by staying relaxed and still rather than panicking and burning it away. Some can hold their breath for many minutes, descending to depths that compress the body and test it severely, all on one held breath. What they are doing at the level of the senses is overriding a deep survival reflex, refusing the body's loud demand and remaining in control of something built to feel uncontrollable. It is dangerous, and it is done with great care, and never alone, because the line between mastery and blackout is real. But it shows the remarkable reach of human control over the inner senses, how even the most insistent bodily command can be met, managed, and quieted through training. The urge to breathe feels like an absolute. To the trained diver, it becomes something to negotiate with calmly in the silence of the deep. The feeling of disgust, the recoil from something rotten or foul, the curl of the lip and the turn of the stomach seems like a mere distaste, an aesthetic reaction. It may be far more than that. A growing view holds that disgust is at its root a kind of behavioral immune system, an ancient defense evolved to keep you away from things that could make you sick. Consider what triggers it. Most powerfully spoiled food, bodily waste, decay, signs of illness in others, the very things that carry disease. The recoil they produce drives you away from contamination before it can enter your body, a protection that works by avoidance rather than by fighting infection after the fact. Disgust in this light is your first line of defense. Older and simpler than the immune system in your blood, written into your reactions to keep contagion at a distance. It even extends outward, this same disgust response coloring moral and social judgments, which suggests how deeply it is woven into us. The next time something turns your stomach, you might recognize it as more than mere squeamishness. It is an inheritance, a guardian shaped over countless generations to steer you clear of what could harm you. Disgust is not weakness. It is your body through feeling alone, keeping you safe from what you cannot see. Bitterness is the taste we are most ready to reject. A strongly bitter flavor produces an almost automatic recoil, a grimace, an impulse to spit it out far more reliably than any other taste. This is no accident of preference. It is a defense, written deep into us by evolution. Across the natural world, many poisonous plants and harmful compounds taste bitter, and so a sensitivity to bitterness, paired with a strong impulse to reject it, would have protected our ancestors from swallowing things that could sicken or kill them. The bitter taste became a warning, and the recoil became the response, both shaped over long ages to guard against poison. This is why humans can detect bitter compounds at very low concentrations far more sensitively than sweetness, because a poison must be caught even in small amounts to be avoided. It also explains why so many bitter foods are ones we learn to tolerate or enjoy only with time and exposure, overriding an instinct that initially says no. The wariness toward bitterness is ancient caution speaking through the tongue. It is your evolutionary inheritance, a built-in suspicion of a taste that long ago often meant danger. Your body still treats bitterness as a possible threat, asking you to be sure before you swallow. If the rejection of bitterness were merely learned, a newborn would have no opinion about it. But place a trace of something bitter on the tongue of an infant only hours old, and the response is immediate and unmistakable. A grimace, a turning away, a clear expression of distaste before the child has eaten anything, learned anything, or had any chance to associate bitterness with harm. The warning is already there, present at birth, written into the body in advance of any experience. This is what makes it so striking. The aversion to bitterness is not taught by the world, but inherited from the deep past, arriving fully formed in a brand new human who has had no time to learn caution. The same is true in reverse for sweetness, which newborns greet with evident pleasure, because sweetness signaled safe, energy-rich food. These innate reactions, visible in the face of an infant, are among the oldest pieces of wisdom we carry. Instructions about what to seek and what to avoid installed before birth. To watch a newborn recoil from bitter is to watch evolution speak directly across countless generations, through the face of someone only hours into life. The caution was handed down to them whole. They knew to reject it before they knew anything at all. We have seen that disgust may guard the body against contamination. Here is where it grows stranger and more revealing. The same brain regions that respond to physical disgust, to rotten food and foul smells, also light up in response to moral violations, to unfairness, to betrayal, to acts we find repugnant. When someone is treated unjustly, when a trust is broken, when behavior crosses a moral line, the brain can respond with a form of the very same disgust it uses for spoiled meat. This is not just a figure of speech, though our language already hints at it, when we call a betrayal sickening or say that cruelty makes us want to recoil. The overlap appears in the brain itself, suggesting that our moral reactions are built, at least in part, on the ancient machinery of physical disgust, the body's old system for avoiding contamination, extended to cover the avoidance of bad actors and bad acts. Our sense of right and wrong may be rooted more than we like to think in the gut-level recoil that once kept us from disease. Morality in this light is not purely a matter of cool reason. It is felt in the body, through systems far older than reason itself. We do not only judge wrongdoing, we are, in a real sense, disgusted by it. When you are excluded, rejected, left out, the hurt feels physical, a real ache, and we reach instinctively for the language of injury, saying we are wounded, that it hurts. This turns out to be more than metaphor. When researchers studied what happens in the brain during social rejection, even something as mild as being left out of a simple game by strangers, they found activity in the same regions that process physical pain. The brain treats social rejection, at least in part, as a kind of injury, lighting up the very circuits that fire when the body is physically hurt. This deep overlap suggests that the pain of exclusion is built on the foundation of physical pain that evolution, needing to keep social creatures bonded to their group, borrowed the existing alarm system of physical pain and turned it toward the threat of being cast out. For a creature whose survival depended on belonging, rejection was a genuine danger, and so it was made to hurt, really hurt, using the machinery already in place. This is why heartbreak and loneliness can feel like physical wounds. They are registering in the body's pain system. The ache of being left out is not imagined or exaggerated. It is pain processed by the apparatus of pain, as real in its way as a blow. The phrase "a broken heart" sounds like the softest kind of metaphor, a poetic name for grief. Yet grief and loss can produce genuine pain in the chest, real physical sensation, and in extreme cases something more dramatic still. There is a recognized medical condition brought on by severe emotional stress, such as the sudden loss of a loved one, in which the heart muscle is temporarily weakened, and a person suffers chest pain and symptoms resembling a heart attack, sometimes called broken heart syndrome. The grief reaches into the body and strikes the heart itself, the emotional blow becoming a physical event. Even short of this, the heaviness in the chest that comes with deep sorrow, the tightness, the ache, is real sensation. The body translating the experience of loss into the physical language it knows. This connection between emotional pain and the body runs deep. The heart and the feelings bound together, not only in poetry, but in flesh. When you feel grief in your chest, you are not imagining it or merely borrowing an image. The body is genuinely responding, registering loss in physical form. Because for a creature like us, separation and bereavement are not abstract. They are felt bodily as something close to injury. The broken heart is at times more literal than we ever meant it to be. It has happened to almost everyone. You are somewhere new, doing something ordinary, and all at once a strange certainty washes over you that this exact moment has happened before, that you have lived this precise scene already down to the smallest detail. It passes quickly, but while it lasts, it can feel uncanny, even unsettling, a glitch in the texture of time. This is déjà vu, a name that means already seen, and nearly everyone experiences it at some point, most often when young. For a long time it invited mystical explanations, but the quiet truth is likely rooted in the workings of memory. The leading idea is that déjà vu is a brief error in the brain's memory systems, a moment when the machinery that produces the feeling of familiarity fires by mistake, tagging a brand new experience as though it were a remembered one. The present arrives wearing the false glow of the past, and for an instant you feel you have been here before, though you have not. It is in this view not a window into another life or a glimpse of the future, but a small, harmless misfire in the way the brain marks what is familiar, a momentary crossed wire, producing one of the strangest feelings a person can have. Sit a moment longer with that strange feeling of déjà vu, because what it reveals about memory is quietly profound. Normally, the sense of familiarity and the actual recollection of an event arrive together. You recognize a face, and you can also recall where you met. But these two things, the feeling of familiarity and the retrieval of a memory, are produced by somewhat separate systems in the brain, and they can come apart. In déjà vu, it seems the familiarity system fires on its own, generating a strong sense that this is known, this has happened before, without any actual memory to support it. So you get the glow of recognition with nothing behind it, a feeling of pastness attached to a present that has no past. This is why déjà vu is so hard to pin down, so slippery, the certainty of having lived this before, paired with a complete inability to say when the feeling is real. The memory it points to does not exist. What this shows is that your sense of remembering is not a single seamless thing, but a construction of parts that can misalign, and when they do, you experience the eerie sensation of a moment that is somehow both new and already lived. The familiarity outran the truth. Your brain felt a memory that was never there. If déjà vu is the strange sense that the new is somehow already known, then consider its mirror image rarer and just as unsettling when the deeply familiar suddenly feels foreign. This is jamais vu, which means never seen, and it is the eerie experience of looking at something you know perfectly well, a common word, a familiar face, a routine place, and finding it abruptly strange, drained of its familiarity as though you were encountering it for the first time. You can sometimes bring it on yourself with a simple word. Repeat an ordinary word over and over, aloud or in your mind, and after a while it can begin to sound bizarre, to lose its meaning, to seem like a random string of sounds, the familiarity wearing away under repetition. That unsettling emptying is a small dose of jamais vu. Like its more famous counterpart, it points to the way familiarity is something the brain actively generates, rather than a fixed property of the world. A feeling that can be switched off, as well as falsely switched on. When it fails, the known becomes alien, and you glimpse how much of your comfort in the world depends on a sense of familiarity, quietly running in the background. Remove it, and even the most ordinary thing turns strange, suddenly seen as if never seen before. When you reach out and pick up a cup, you feel without question that you did it, that you willed the action and carried it out, that you are its author. This feeling, the sense of agency, seems so obvious, it hardly seems worth naming. Yet it is not a simple given. It is something the brain constructs, and the timing of how it does so is genuinely strange. The brain appears to generate the feeling of agency, partly after the action is already underway, weaving together the intention, the movement, and the result into a smooth sense of, "I did that," assembled in part after the fact. Evidence for this comes from situations where the sense of agency can be manipulated, where people can be made to feel they caused something they did not, or that they did not cause something they did, simply by adjusting the timing and the cues the brain uses to assign authorship. The feeling of being the doer is a judgment the brain makes, an interpretation, not a direct perception of your own will in action. Most of the time it is accurate, and you correctly feel yourself as the author of your deeds, but it is constructed after a fashion, stitched together a heartbeat behind the act, which means the most basic feeling of being in control is itself a kind of story the brain tells. Here is one of the most disquieting findings about the human mind, and it concerns the very moment of choice. In certain experiments where people were asked to make a simple, freely timed movement, such as flicking a finger whenever they felt the urge, researchers found activity building in the brain before the person reported being aware of having decided to move. The brain, it seemed, began preparing the action before the conscious decision announced itself, the readiness gathering in advance of the felt choice. Then the awareness of deciding arrived, followed by the movement with the conscious sense of having chosen appearing after the brain was already underway. The interpretation of these findings is debated deeply and legitimately, and it is far from settled what they truly mean for the question of free will. Some argue they show the conscious decision to be an afterthought, others that the picture is far more complicated than that. The science here is genuinely unresolved, and honest researchers disagree, but the core observation remains striking and well replicated. That the brain can begin an action before you are aware of choosing it, then present the choice to you as your own. At the very least, the timing of will is stranger than it feels, and the experience of deciding may not be quite what it seems. Sit with the unsettling possibility these findings raise, while holding it lightly, because it is not settled. If the brain can begin to act before you are aware of choosing, then the vivid feeling that you consciously decided then acted may be, at least in part, a story the mind assembles after the fact. The body begins and the mind, catching up, weaves a coherent account in which a conscious self deliberated and chose and then made the body move. The narrative feels seamless and true, with you firmly in the driver's seat, even if the actual sequence in the brain was less tidy. This does not necessarily mean free will is an illusion, a conclusion many thoughtful people reject, and the debate is real and unresolved among scientists and philosophers alike. But it does suggest that the experience of willing is itself something the brain produces, a constructed feeling, rather than a direct window onto the mechanics of choice. What you feel when you feel yourself deciding may be a kind of interpretation fitted over a process you cannot directly observe. There is humility in this, and a strange wonder too. Even your sense of being the author of your own life is in part an experience the brain creates, a story told so smoothly that you live inside it without ever seeing the seams. Walk into a room where something has just happened, an argument, a piece of bad news, a moment of joy, and you often feel it at once before anyone speaks, the emotional atmosphere reaching you almost instantly. This is not imagination or guesswork. The human brain reads emotion from faces with extraordinary speed, registering the expression on a face in a fraction of a second. Faster than conscious thought, picking up fear, anger, sadness, or warmth before you have had time to deliberately look. We are exquisitely tuned to one another's faces, and especially to the eyes, drawing emotional information from the subtlest configurations of brow and mouth and gaze, often below the level of awareness. This is why a room's mood can hit you the moment you enter, why you can sense that something is wrong before a word confirms it. The emotional weather read directly off the faces around you. It is an ancient and essential ability for a deeply social creature, the rapid sensing of how others feel, which once meant the difference between safety and danger, belonging and exile. You are constantly automatically reading the people around you, gathering their feelings from their faces faster than you can think. The sense of a room's mood is real, and it arrives through this swift, silent reading of the human face. Not all smiles are the same, and somewhere within you, you already know it. There is a difference between a polite, deliberate smile and the genuine, spontaneous smile of real delight, and the difference lies largely in the eyes. A true smile of enjoyment engages a particular muscle around the eyes, the one that crinkles them and lifts the cheeks, producing the warmth we recognize as authentic. This muscle is difficult to move by deliberate will, tending to activate only with genuine positive feeling, which is why a forced smile so often looks slightly hollow, the mouth curving, while the eyes stay flat and uninvolved. People can sense this distinction, often without knowing how, perceiving a real smile as warmer and more trustworthy than a posed one. Reading the eyes even when they are not consciously looking there. This kind of true smile marked by the eyes even carries a name in the research honoring the scientist who first described it. What is quietly moving about this is that genuine feeling tends to show itself in a way that is hard to fake, written into the face by muscles that answer mostly to real emotion. We are built both to express true joy and to recognize it in others, a small honesty woven into the human face. The smile that reaches the eyes is felt as real, because in a deep sense it is. Consider how early our attunement to faces begins, because it begins almost impossibly soon. A newborn only hours into life with no experience of the world, no understanding of what a face even is, can nonetheless respond to the expressions of others. Stick out your tongue at a newborn, and the baby may stick out its own. Open your mouth wide, and the infant may open its mouth in turn. This early imitation observed in babies in their first hours and days suggests that the human capacity to read and answer faces is present at the very start, woven in before any learning could account for it. The newborn cannot understand the expression, cannot know what a tongue or a smile means. Yet some deep system is already at work perceiving the face and matching it, connecting to another person through expression before comprehension is possible. This points to how fundamental the reading of faces is to our nature, present from the first hours, foundational to everything social that follows. Before a baby knows anything about the world, it is already turning toward faces and answering them, already engaged in the silent exchange that binds people together. The conversation of faces, it seems, begins almost at the moment of birth, an inheritance we bring into the world, rather than learn within it. We speak of warm people and cold personalities, of a warm welcome and a cold shoulder, and we treat these as figures of speech. But the link between physical warmth and social warmth runs deeper than language into the body itself. In a striking experiment, people who briefly held a warm drink went on to judge a stranger as having a warmer, more generous personality than those who had held a cold drink, the physical warmth in their hands quietly shaping their perception of another person's character. The body's sense of literal temperature bled into its sense of social warmth, the two intertwined more closely than we would ever suspect. This connection appears to be rooted in early life, when the warmth of being held by a caregiver was bound up with the experience of love and safety, so that physical and emotional warmth were learned together in the same moments and stayed linked in the brain. The result is that physical warmth can subtly evoke feelings of trust and closeness, and physical cold, the opposite. Our metaphors of warmth and coldness are not arbitrary. They rest on a real foundation in the body, a sense in which to be warmed is faintly to be cared for. The language only follows what the body already knew. If warmth is bound up with connection, then its absence, loneliness, may register in the body as a kind of cold, and indeed lonely people more often report feeling physically cold and are drawn toward warmth as a comfort. But the bodily toll of loneliness reaches far deeper than a chill. Sustained loneliness and social isolation have real, measurable effects on health, including on the immune system, which can be weakened by prolonged disconnection, leaving the body more vulnerable. Chronic loneliness has been linked to elevated stress, to inflammation, to poorer health across many measures. Its effects on the body serious enough that researchers compare its impact on mortality to that of major physical risks. The body, it turns out, registers the lack of connection as a genuine threat, responding to social isolation much as it would to a physical danger. Mounting a stress response that sustained over time wears the body down. This is the shadow side of our social nature, that the need for connection is so deep that its absence sickens us literally in the flesh. Loneliness is not merely a sad feeling. It is a state the body reacts to, a kind of ongoing alarm that connection is missing, with real consequences for health. We are made for one another so thoroughly that being alone for too long harms the body itself. Gather these threads together, and a quiet truth emerges about what we are. The longing for connection, the pull toward other people, the discomfort of isolation, is not a soft preference layered over a self-sufficient creature. It is closer to a fundamental sense, as real and as rooted as hunger or thirst, evolved to keep a deeply social animal bound to its kind. Just as hunger drives you toward food because your body needs it, the ache of loneliness drives you toward others, because across the long history of our species, survival depended on belonging to a group. To stray too far alone was to be in danger, and so the need for connection was made to be felt sharply, as a kind of hunger of its own, drawing us back toward one another. This is why isolation hurts, why connection soothes, why we are built to read faces and sense moods and feel the warmth of company. The social sense runs as deep in us as the senses that keep the body fed and safe. We do not merely enjoy other people. We need them in a way written into our nature, felt as a longing that has guided humans toward each other for as long as there have been humans. To want connection is not weakness. It is one of the truest senses we possess. Where do you live inside your own body? Where is the you that thinks and feels and chooses? Ask people this question, and something remarkable appears. Across many cultures and throughout history, when people are asked where the self resides, they tend to point not to the head, but to the chest, to the heart, locating their innermost self in the center of the body rather than in the brain. This is striking, because we know the brain is where thought and feeling are produced, and yet the felt sense of where we are does not match the science. The self feels centered in the chest behind the heart, in a region we associate with emotion and depth. This intuition runs across languages and traditions, the heart standing in countless cultures as the seat of the true self, the place of love and courage and sincerity. It is a feeling, not a fact about anatomy, yet it is remarkably consistent, suggesting something about how the body's deep interior, the strong sensations of the chest and heart, anchors our sense of who we are. We may know the brain does the work, but we feel ourselves to dwell lower, nearer the heart, in the warm center of the body. The place we point to when we say me is for most of us not where the thinking happens at all. Many people asked where their thinking happens will point to the space behind their eyes, feeling their thoughts to be located there in the head, just behind the gaze. It feels natural, obvious, simply true. Yet this feeling is not universal, and that is what makes it worth pausing on. The sense that thought lives behind the eyes appears to be shaped in part by culture and learning rather than being a fixed fact of human experience. Not every culture locates the self or the mind in the head, and as we have seen, the chest and heart often claim that role instead. Even the strong intuition of dwelling behind the eyes may owe something to the prominence of vision in how we engage the world, to the way our eyes lead us to learned ideas about the mind residing in the brain. This means that one of the most basic features of your inner experience, where you feel yourself to be located, is not simply given by biology, but shaped by the culture and concepts you grew up within. People in different places may genuinely feel themselves to be situated differently within their own bodies. The sense of where you are, so immediate and certain, turns out to be partly taught. Even your location within yourself is in some measure something you learned. That flash of knowing, the sudden sense that something is right or wrong, that a situation is off, that a decision is correct, arriving all at once without visible reasoning, feels almost mysterious, as though knowledge had appeared from nowhere. But much of intuition has a quieter, more grounded source. It is often the body and brain recognizing a pattern, drawing on a vast store of past experience, and signaling the conclusion before the conscious mind has caught up enough to explain it. The recognition is real, and based on genuine information, the accumulated learning of everything you have encountered before, but it surfaces as a feeling rather than a chain of reasoning, because the pattern matching happens faster and deeper than conscious thought. This is why an experienced person can sense that something is wrong, without being able at first to say why, the knowledge arriving as a feeling that the reasons only catch up to later. Intuition in this light is not the absence of thinking, but a very fast, largely unconscious form of it. The fruit of experience delivered as a hunch. The mystery dissolves into something more trustworthy. Your intuition is your accumulated knowledge, speaking in the only language it has when reasoning is too slow, the language of feeling. The body knows the pattern before the mind can name it. There is a kind of intuition that deserves real trust, and it belongs to those who have spent years immersed in something. The experienced firefighter who senses a building is about to collapse and pulls his team out moments before it does. The veteran nurse who knows a patient is deteriorating before the instruments show it. The master in any field who simply sees the right move. This expert intuition is genuine, and it is earned, built from thousands of hours of experience that have trained the mind to recognize subtle patterns invisible to a novice. The expert cannot always explain how they knew, because the knowing arrives as a feeling, a compressed judgment drawn from countless past situations, delivered too fast for conscious reasoning to trace. It can seem like a sixth sense, an uncanny knowing, and in a way it is, though its source is not mysterious at all, but the deep accumulation of learning refined until it surfaces as instinct. This is worth distinguishing from mere guessing or wishful hunches, because expert intuition rests on real, hard-won experience in a field where patterns genuinely repeat. The feeling that arrives without explanation is in these cases the voice of everything the expert has ever learned speaking at once. Years of mastery compressed into a knowing that comes faster than thought. Sometimes your body reacts before you consciously recognize that anything is wrong. Faced with a stressful situation, a difficult person, a moment of unease, your body can register it first. The heart rate shifting, the skin responding, a faint tension gathering before any clear thought has named the trouble. This can be measured. The skin's electrical activity changes with emotional arousal, and these changes can appear before a person consciously reports feeling anything, the body responding to a stressor, a step ahead of awareness. In certain experiments, people's bodies began reacting differently to risky choices before they could consciously explain why those choices were risky, the body learning the danger before the mind could articulate it. This is the grounded reality behind so much of what we call gut feeling and intuition, a body that reads situations and reacts to them slightly ahead of conscious understanding, signaling through the heart and skin and gut that something matters. The knowing rises into awareness only afterward, often arriving as a vague feeling whose source you cannot name. Your body is, in a real sense, a sensing instrument, running constantly, picking up on threat and significance before your thinking mind has assembled the picture. When you feel that something is off before you know why, trust that the body has often noticed first. For all that science has grounded intuition in pattern recognition and bodily signals, an honest accounting must admit that not everything is explained. There remain hunches, feelings, moments of knowing that prove right more often than easy explanations can account for, and researchers continue to study how and why intuition works as well as it sometimes does. Much of it dissolves into the unconscious processing we have described, the body and brain reading patterns below awareness. But the full picture is still being assembled, and there is real, honest uncertainty about the limits and the mechanisms of human intuition, about how much we sense that we cannot yet explain. This is not a door thrown open to the supernatural, and the evidence for anything beyond ordinary perception and cognition remains absent, despite long searching. But it is an admission worth making that the human capacity to sense and to know is not yet fully mapped, that some of what we feel runs ahead of what we can currently account for. There is humility in this, and a kind of openness too. We have learned a great deal about the senses beyond the famous five, and there is more we do not yet understand. The mystery has not been emptied. It has only been made more precise and more genuinely our own. After all the senses we have explored, the inner ones and the hidden ones and the surprising ones, there may be a candidate for the richest of them all, and it is one we rarely name as a sense at all. It is the sense of another person's inner life, the feeling of what someone else is feeling, the capacity to perceive, however imperfectly, the experience unfolding inside another mind. We do this constantly, reading a friend's mood, sensing a stranger's distress, feeling the joy or sorrow of someone we love, almost as if it were our own. This is empathy, and it is a genuine form of sensing, a way of reaching across the gap between separate minds, to feel something of what another feels. Of all the remarkable senses we possess, this may be the most precious, the one that binds us to each other, that makes love and friendship and compassion possible, that lets us be in some real measure not alone. It is imperfect, often mistaken, never complete, for no one can fully feel another's experience. Yet that it works at all is extraordinary, that a separate person can sense the inner weather of another and be moved by it. If there is a sixth sense worth honoring above the rest, it may be this quiet one, the sense of one another. How is it even possible to feel what another person feels, to sense their pain or their joy from outside their body? The answer lies partly in a remarkable feature of the brain. When you watch someone else experience something, your brain does not merely observe it from a distance. It runs a faint version of that experience inside you, activating in part the same regions that would fire if you were having the experience yourself. Watch someone in pain, and your own pain-related regions stir. See someone touched, and your own touch systems respond faintly. This internal mirroring lets you feel into another's state by recreating a quiet echo of it within your own body and brain, so that their experience becomes in a muted form your own. This is part of the machinery of empathy, a way the brain bridges the gap between separate people by simulating one another from the inside. It means that when you feel another's sorrow or delight, you are in a real sense generating a trace of that feeling within yourself, living a faint copy of their experience. The connection between people is not only metaphorical, it is built into the brain, which is structured to recreate the inner lives of others within itself. We feel each other by becoming briefly and partly one another. You have felt this mirroring at work in small ways and large. Someone across the room yawns, and a yawn rises in you, unbidden, almost impossible to resist. Someone laughs, and you find yourself smiling before you know why. You walk into a room heavy with grief, and the sorrow seems to settle into your own chest, the mood of the place becoming for a moment your own feeling. These are the everyday signs of the shared sensing built into us, the contagious yawn, the spreading laughter, the way emotion travels from person to person and settles in the body. The yawn that pulls another from you is one of the simplest and strangest demonstrations of this connection, an involuntary echo passing between people, stronger between those who are close. And the way a room's grief or joy can enter you is the same machinery, at a deeper level, your brain recreating the feelings around you within yourself, so that you catch the emotional weather of the people you are among. We are not sealed off from one another, each feeling alone behind the wall of our skin. We leak into each other constantly through this quiet sensing, our feelings passing back and forth below all awareness. To be among people is to be continually moved by them in ways you never chose and rarely notice. We have traveled through senses you never knew you had, and here at the end is the truth that holds them all. Every sense you possess, the famous 5 and the hidden many, is a narrow window onto reality, tuned to catch only a small band of what is actually there. Your eyes see only a thin slice of all the light that exists, blind to the rest. Your ears catch only a portion of the sounds in the air, deaf to those above and below your range. The magnetic field that guides migrating birds you cannot feel. Vast reaches of the world pass through you and around you entirely unsensed, because your body was never built to detect them. The world you experience, so full and vivid and complete, is not the world entire. It is the sliver your senses were shaped to catch, the narrow portion that mattered for the survival of your ancestors, rendered into the rich experience you mistake for everything. This is not cause for sorrow, but for wonder, and for a kind of humility. The reality you feel so certainly is a small, beautiful fragment of a far larger whole, and even within that fragment, as we have seen, there is more sensing happening inside you than you ever knew. You contain senses you have never noticed, perceiving a world that is only a sliver of all there is. Now let these threads draw together. We began with a question: what lies beyond the 5 senses? And we found not one answer but a whole hidden country. The sense of your own body in space, the balance held by crystals in your ear, the steady reading of your inner life, the pain and temperature, and the 1,000 signals your brain filters into silence. We found that so much of what you feel is constructed, the boundary of your body, the location of yourself, the very feeling of choosing. We found that your body often knows before your mind admits it, that beauty can raise the hair on your arms, that you sense one another through channels you never chose. And we found running beneath all of it, how narrow and how precious your window on the world truly is. If there is something to carry away from this quiet hour, perhaps it is a gentler attention to yourself, to the constant faithful, sensing your body performs without thanks, and to the people around you whose inner lives you can feel because you are built to. You are richer in senses than you were ever told, more connected, more finely tuned, dwelling in a sliver of a vast reality and feeling it deeply all the same. Thank you for spending this time here with me. Good night.